Welcome to The Public's Health, the show that puts you, the public, back into public health. It's a product of the Alameda County Public Health Department. Today, we're going to examine a complex public health issue, one that has many different facets, and we hope that we'll be able to bring you as many of them as possible. It's about port trucking in West Oakland and the health of people living in the shadow of the Port of Oakland. My guest host today is the Deputy Director of the Public Health Department, Dr. Sandra Witt, and her title is Deputy Director for Policy, Planning, and Health Equity, and she's going to take us through this complex subject today. Stay with us.
Welcome to The Public's Health. My name is Sandra Witt, Deputy Director of Planning, Policy, and Health Equity for the Alameda County Public Health Department. The Port of Oakland is the fourth largest port in the United States, so the role of port truck drivers is central to this very important economic activity. Approximately 1,500 trucks go in and out of the port on a daily basis through the neighborhoods in West Oakland. The issues raised by port truck driving are really complex. They impact the health of the neighboring communities, the health of the truck drivers. They have environmental consequences, as well as impact labor and economic conditions. And to help us understand better these complex issues, as well as to provide some solutions, are two of my guests. Mr. Doug Bloch, from the Director of the Coalition for Safe and Clean Ports, and Yvonne Smith, a resident from who's lived in West Oakland for over 60 years, a member of ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, as well as a member of Just Cause Oakland, here today to discuss these issues. And to start us off, what we're going to do is watch some excerpts from a film that was produced by the Coalition for Clean and Safe Ports called A Drive to the Bottom.
You would think that California is already environmentally conscious until you see the port. And you see what's happening with asthma in West Oakland, when you see what's happening with these engines that are literally just kind of chilling out by schools or by neighborhoods.
This is the Port of Oakland, and we're on Maritime Street in front of the Horizon Terminal. And the system, from a driver's standpoint, is extremely exploitive. You've got people that are grossing probably $100,000 a year, but when they net out, they're talking about $20,000 to $25,000 a year in net income. And with that, there's nothing in terms of benefits, no health and welfare, no pension, no sick leave, no vacation, no holidays. They're not even covered by workers' compensation.
See all these trucks, they're in line. They have to get in line to get loaded.
The ports have been talking about, everyone's been talking about the pollution that comes from these dilapidated trucks that are servicing the ports. But we can't solve that problem unless we change the conditions that the drivers are facing.
You drive on 880 and you see all these train stations, you see all these cranes, and they literally follow you all the way up to the airport, because if you're driving along 880 in Oakland, all you're seeing is port industry.
The Port of Oakland, as well as the Port of LA, Long Beach, Seattle, Tacoma, Miami, Newark, and New York, is really an economic engine for not just the area in which it operates, but for the country.
45% of the nation's goods come through these ports.
If truck drivers stopped working one day, America would stop working.
So we put together a coalition of a broad base of organizations: religious, labor, environment, faith-based, local community organizations. The coalition that we formed is the Coalition for Clean and Safe Ports. Really what we've come together around are two key problems. One is pollution, and the other is working conditions of port drivers.
We used to have the saying that if you want to change the world, change it one life at a time. Well, there's about 3,000 lives at the Port of Oakland that can be affected and that can be changed.
Sos el hijo de la nada, sos la vida que se va, son los niños, son los viejos, son las madres.
The Port of Oakland is a public resource. It was created by the City of Oakland, by the people of Oakland, and this project is an exciting opportunity not just for the truck drivers but for the community to really have a say in making the port work for working people.
Our community at large will be a better place. The fact that we have that much of a bigger chance to be able to tell a young person, you ever thought about driving trucks? You know, they pay pretty good. You know they got benefits. You know you can have a pension now.
The excitement about this campaign is the fact that we've got environmental groups and labor groups working together, blue-green campaign coming together to make economic and environmental change.
So Doug, could you share with us some more information about the conditions under which these truck drivers work?
Sure, and thank you. Actually, the truck driving system at the Port of Oakland is broken. It's failing the community and it's failing the drivers. A lot has been said about the public health problems related to port trucking and the pollution. But for the first time, people are starting to look at the problems that the drivers face. And we've come to understand the only way you're going to be able to solve the public health problems is by dealing with the issues of the truck drivers. So what it's like for drivers at the Port of Oakland, you have, as we said, about 1,500 drivers that go down to the port every morning. They park their trucks and they wait in line for work. You can think of them as day laborers on wheels. They're not guaranteed work when they come down there. And they're hauling goods for some of the largest corporations in the world, Walmart, Target, Home Depot. They contract with trucking companies to move their goods, and those companies in turn contract with the truck drivers. And they're hired as independent contractors, not as employees. So they don't get paid by the hour. They're not salaried. They get paid by the load. And what that means for your average truck driver in Oakland is they're working 11 to 14 hours a day. They have no benefits. They have no insurance. They have no workers' compensation. And at the end of the day, they're making as little as $8 an hour. See, they're hired as independent contractors. And the other problem with that is they're responsible for buying the trucks, for operating the trucks, and maintaining them. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you're making $8 an hour, you can only afford to operate a dirty truck. What that means is since your average driver in Oakland spends about 2 hours a day waiting in line, their trucks are inching forward, and that whole time they're belching out dirty diesel smoke. The drivers are breathing it, and it's going into West Oakland, where 1 in 5 kids have asthma. So we have a system where you have some very large corporations that are contracting out all the responsibility for pollution and putting it on the backs of impoverished immigrant truck drivers in the West Oakland community.
So Yvonne, from a resident perspective, what do you see in terms of truckers?
As a resident, we live and we breathe these fumes every day, 24 hours. Employees can go home, we can't. We have to live there. Asthma rate in West Oakland is 5 times higher than any place else in Alameda County. It's become a common thing for children to have asthma. I personally have had 2 great nephews die of asthma, actually died from asthma.
Wow.
These toxics are killing us. They're killing our children, and the children are our future. We don't need this. We don't need this at all.
Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that the community is organized around some of these issues?
The community is, they're very concerned with their children. They're very concerned, and we're tired of it. Mm-hmm. We're tired of it. We put up with this for years. West Oakland has been neglected, and I mean, that's insult to injury. Having these fumes come out, knowing they're toxic, knowing it's going to cause health issues, and not taking any steps to prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have a coalition now of over 30 environmental, community, labor, public health, advocacy organizations that have come together and come forward to ask the Port of Oakland to take some responsibility for this.
Great. So let's hear now from a truck driver, Lorenzo Fernandez, who is going to share with us a little bit more about what it means to be a truck driver in Oakland.
I start, usually sometimes at 5:30, sometimes at 5 o'clock. We spend sometimes 3 to 4 hours in line to get a container. It's a 1994, Freightliner. To maintain these trucks, it takes a lot of money, especially when we spend all those hours in line without getting paid. It's very tough. Me and a lot of us, independent truck drivers, we're aware about all the contamination, that our trucks pollute, all the air. And it's a really big issue, that is affecting not just us as a driver, but also it's affecting the community and also our families. 1 out of 5 children is affected with asthma. It's a really bad situation. See, the community are complaining about all the contamination, and probably they're blaming us. And they don't blame us just for the contamination, for the polluting. They're complaining also about all these trucks parking at the neighborhood. We don't want to do that. I myself, I got a place to park, to be honest. But most of the drivers, they don't have it. If they do, it's very expensive because they're gonna charge, I don't know, maybe $100, $150 a month. See, that's another portion of money that will be taken away from our checks. And neighbors are complaining, which is, they're all right. It's too dangerous, especially in the morning. To move these trucks, we gotta warm it up for at least 10 or 20 minutes. Imagine the engine running at 4:30 in the morning, waking up all the family. We need to survive. We need to drive this truck in order to bring food to our family. If we had new trucks, it would be another situation. But at this point, we can handle it. But now we're trying to get together and to be an employees. And the port, because the port is the one that got the power. That will be the first issue, that will help us. And also, see, I heard rumors about people saying that if we become employees, the economy will go down. See, I don't believe in that, because the economy will still go up even better, because that will provide a lot of more work, for a lot of people that are out of work right now.
So Doug, do you want to say a little bit more about the conditions of being a truck driver that Lorenzo talked about, as well as to this reference to the health impact? We started talking a little bit, Yvonne, and you have talked a little bit about some of the health impacts of diesel and air pollution and how it affects health. But if you could say a little bit more and elaborate on that, that would be great.
Well, one thing that every truck driver in Oakland has in common, it's almost entirely immigrant workforce, and they all came here to this country looking for something better. They believe in the American dream. And the truth is, as we just heard from Lorenzo, for many of these drivers, it's the American nightmare. I think most people would be shocked to know that we have truck drivers in Oakland who live in their trucks. If you go down to the port at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, the trucks are there, they're in line, they're waiting to get loads in the morning, and it's really criminal, the situation. Lorenzo talked about some of the problems with the pollution, and the drivers spend all day sitting in their trucks breathing those fumes. But what it means for the West Oakland community, living next to all of that pollution, having the trucks drive through their neighborhood, is asthma rates that are 5 times higher than the rest of the county. A person who lives in West Oakland can expect to die 10 years quicker than somebody who lives in the Oakland Hill, and that's because they're neighbors with the Port of Oakland. In 2005, West Oakland experienced over 350 preventable respiratory illness hospitalizations. If we were able to clean up this broken port trucking system, it would go a long way to reducing the public health impacts in West Oakland.
Wow, the inequities that you've just talked about are huge. The fact that someone on average living in West Oakland dies 10 years earlier than someone that lives in the Oakland Hills. I mean, that's just amazing. And I'm wondering if either one of you can talk a little bit more about the inequities that you see on a daily basis.
Well, it's not uncommon for children to have asthma. It's almost accepted as a way of life. and it shouldn't be. Some children have to carry inhalers with them. Some children have to carry their little asthma machines with them. And this is very unfair to our youth. It's killing our youth. We know that one of the problems is the big diesel trucks. Sometimes we can't keep them off of our streets, parking in our neighborhood. Then it becomes a safety issue because children are short and they're way up in those tall trucks and they can't see them. But while they sit there idling their truck, it can go right into your house. Like I live on a corner. If they're parked there, it'll go right into my house. And what do you have for your children and your grandchildren except your legacy of West Oakland? You want them to be able to live healthy lives. They're not. The port wants to put a Band-Aid on it. That's not the solution. That's not the solution at all. The independent drivers took down to the Port Commission a petition saying they wanted to work for companies. 1,250 signatures. That should mean something. But it's just like that's being ignored. The community is behind that. We want clean and safe trucks. We want the atmosphere to be clean for our children. We want it to be clean for us. You know. And another thing is the jobs. The jobs do not go to the residents of West Oakland. The port has no outreach to West Oakland unless you go to the port and sign up for mail. They don't even know when jobs are available. West Oakland is being abused and neglected, and we are just tired of it.
So we can't say how many West Oakland residents actually have jobs in the port?
They don't keep statistics. They don't keep statistics, so we don't know, but I can assure you there are very few of them.
Acorn actually did a door-to-door survey in West Oakland. 37% of the households that they talked to had a person that was unemployed. 90% of the households had somebody looking for work. We know that the port is an economic engine for the region. That engine needs to lift people up. It needs to lift up the West Oakland community. It needs to lift up the lives of the truck drivers and their families. Unfortunately, we have a system right now where we're subsidizing some of the largest companies in the world who don't really have to pay the cost of polluting our neighborhoods or doing business. We'd like to see that change.
So what you're saying is right now, how are they subsidizing this? Explain that a little bit more.
Every time a truck driver or a person in West Oakland goes to the hospital because they don't have health insurance, the county pays the bill, the taxpayers, the public. Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Sears, the ones who are actually paying for these trucking services, they don't have to pay that price. And that's because all the costs in this system are put on the backs of the independent truck drivers who are the least ill-equipped to actually pay for operating clean trucks, for getting parking spaces so that they can get out of the West Oakland community. And the community pays with its health. So it's time for business to pay their fair share also in Oakland. And we can make a system that works. People don't have to die over trucks anymore.
Right. So on one of our previous shows, Dr. Iton spoke to Margaret Gordon, a well-known environmental justice community organizer who has recently been appointed to the Port Commission. So let's hear what she's got to say and then come back to this issue and possibly discuss some solutions to this problem.
Yeah. One of our guests, Margaret Gordon, is an expert in West Oakland and some of the environmental issues that are ongoing there. And we'd like to hear from her and hear the expertise from the streets about West Oakland. Margaret.
Thank you, Tony, for having me here. I am a resident of West Oakland. I've been there for 14 years. I've been doing environmental justice work for about the last 10 years. And my expertise of finding out the sources of air pollution and asthma has been related to the port. I live less than a mile away. The port has, on the average between the three freeways that make up West Oakland, anywhere from 12 to 14,000 truck trips a day. That's a lot of trucks in the neighborhood. That's not including the ships that's coming in, the cranes that are operating. That's not including the air cargo that's moving in and out of the airport. But we are inundated within West Oakland by diesel. And by having diesel, as I have learned over the years, that diesel can trigger asthma attack. And so being that close proximity to that kind of activity of the port, community is just accessible to that poor outdoor air quality.
Wow, the Port of Oakland is the 4th biggest port in the country, and 12 to 14,000 truck trips a day. That's astounding. So the burden of diesel pollution that falls on West Oakland probably contributes in some degree to the disproportionate amount of asthma in that community.
So Doug, the Coalition for Clean and Safe Ports has really been working on this issue, and I understand have recently produced a report or some information and also proposed an alternative to the current truck system. So could you share what those details are?
Sure, yeah. One of our coalition members, the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, recently released a report looking at all of these problems around the port trucking system and a variety of potential solutions that have been proposed. What that report recommended was actually for the port to step in and take responsibility for this system. And the port can do that because they're a landlord. The problem we have right now is you have all of these businesses operating on port property, and the port has no relationship and no standards for them. You can imagine it as if I rented an apartment from you and I trashed the apartment and you wouldn't have the ability to evict me. And that's what we have right now, is companies who are trashing the environment and the port can't do anything. So what the coalition's calling on is for the port to set standards for the trucking companies that operate on their property. And those standards should include operating clean trucks, clean equipment, so that we can fix these air quality issues. Providing off-street parking so that we get the trucks out of the West Oakland neighborhood. Hiring the truck drivers as employees. Let's get rid of this independent contracting scheme so that we can take some of the costs and burden off the backs of the drivers. And actually that's what the truck drivers want. As Yvonne mentioned, 1,250 of those 1,500 truck drivers submitted a petition to the Port Commission saying they want to be employees and they want the trucking companies to take responsibility for those trucks. Finally, if we make these quality jobs, we believe that people in communities like West Oakland and the 880 corridor should have a crack at getting those jobs. And that businesses, small local businesses, should get the support they need to meet the standards. The port needs to create meaningful economic opportunities for people, and as the landlord they have the opportunity to show leadership on this issue.
Great. So I'm just curious, what would it cost for a truck to be reconfigured and decrease diesel emissions?
Well,
like what are we talking about in terms of?
We're talking about, we've estimated about 7 cents on the cost of a $45 pair of tennis shoes that we buy at Walmart. The ports of LA and Long Beach are considering this proposal right now, and they hired an economist to study how much would this cost. He came to the conclusion that to clean up the trucks, to pay the truck drivers a living wage and hire them as employees would just be a fraction of the cost on the goods. And that actually, if we were able to clean up the environment around the port, that our port could grow and hire new people, and that it would reduce the cost of the public health system, so have an overall benefit to the region. Mm-hmm. The only people that don't want this are some of the low-road trucking companies and the big shippers who don't want to pay. They've had a good 25-year run at this current system, and it's time for them to start to pay.
And what is the current state of affairs in terms of this conversation?
Well, the port is looking at setting standards. Unfortunately, the port doesn't really want to change the system as far as we can tell. And they're responding to industry pressure that says the truck drivers and the community should continue to pay, and that the taxpayers should pay the cost of changing over the fleet. As Yvonne can say, our coalition doesn't really find that acceptable.
Oh no, we don't find that acceptable. We have to pay taxes on everything. Now you're doing it to us again. No. And we don't want a Band-Aid solution. We want low emission trucks. That's what we want, that's what we need. And we need jobs for our people in West Oakland. There is nobody that you can go to that won't tell you the environment is bad, and everybody, if they're not related to somebody, they know somebody that needs a job badly. And we're being very overlooked. And we just won't stand for it. We've been nice, we've been nice, we've been nice. But now we have to start saying, hey, you're not doing the right thing. You are not doing the right thing. Clean up the environment, hire our people. Let these truck drivers work for companies that they can get benefits for, and then bring our people in from West Oakland, and they can get these same benefits from these companies.
Great.
And good paying jobs.
Well, I think, you know, you've really clearly talked about the complex issues involved in this whole effort. And clearly this work is going to really require a lot of us working in partnership with the port, with the city of Oakland, particularly with the residents of West Oakland and the truckers who are most affected by these conditions. So I just want to thank you very, very much for coming today and shedding some light on these issues, and really advocate for all of us working together and continuing to do this great work that you've begun.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.